Take
All right,
twos.
welcome back to the MMA Creators Podcast, episode 24. I'm Leo Cooper, MMA, joined by myself and Will from Casual's Corner, YouTube and Instagram. And we have a very special guest. It's JK from Against the Fence. How are you, brother?
What's up? Good. Yeah, not too bad, man. Still recovering from last night, of course. I think I got to bed
Aren't we all?
around, what, 6:30 or 6, something like that.
Struggles of
After
a UK
wrapping up.
fan, mate.
Yeah, man. It's unreal. People don't get it, you know? I think the
Yeah,
US audience had it, like, what, once this year? Where it
They
was,
were
like,
complaining
super
as well.
I know. I'm like, come
They
on,
do
bro.
not know the struggle.
No.
So for anyone that doesn't know, JK is part of a trio on the Against the Fence channel. They do watch-alongs, just news, just about everything MMA ever. And I have to say, honestly, I have connected with a lot of channels just in the space, as is Will. And I'd say you guys probably have the craziest output of content out there. And I think you just deserve more recognition than you get, which is a shame. But you guys put in an absolute shift. And I just wanted to ask you about that before we really like sort of roll into the fights. How do you do that? How do you create so much? Because I still do understand it.
I appreciate your kind words, my man. To be honest, yeah, hard work pays off at the end of the day.
Very
It's
true.
for me, it's a bit of an obsession. It's just constantly grinding it out, doing bit by bit, whether it be socials, editing, preparing shows, like you name it. There's always time in the day to do it, and I always have kind of some kind of structure going throughout. I barely rest basically. As soon as I get home from work, I mean, I'll do bits of the channel at work, but as soon as I get home, I'm watching tape for the upcoming fight card. It's at least 3 to 4 nights a week just studying tape.
Really?
You said there about having a structure and it being obviously a workload. With there being 3 of you, of course that helps a little bit with the quantity, but for people that maybe haven't worked on something like that with multiple people, sometimes it's quite difficult. How do you sort of structure it, as in who does what? Does someone take the editing? Does someone take maybe the breakdowns? Is there sort of a structure like that, or is it a little bit more free flowing of who does what?
Yeah, no, we definitely sort of identify our strengths, and I think I just kind of we work to each other's strengths. We kind of we have our individual roles in a way, like behind the scenes, like who's good at doing the socials, who will do the socials, who's got the time for that, who will engage with people more on Twitter, and
Well, we
who
lost
will
you
reach
again there
out
for a
to
sec. No, you're good.
who will reach out to fighters and make sure that we've got a strong relationship with them. So yeah, there is a lot that goes on behind the scenes, but as long as you got like that structure in place, then you're pretty much all good, really.
Coming
Is
up
that?
sorry,
you
Leo,
go,
I just wanted a couple of things
all
just off
good.
the back of that, because it's something that I keep trying to improve recently myself. Is there, again, just coming back to a sort of process or a structure, do you have a day, maybe it's a Saturday, maybe it's a Sunday, where you look at the week and think, right, okay, this week we want to maybe get out X, Y, Z, or maybe we have certain projects we want to accomplish? Or is it more you take it on day by day and sort of see what the MMA world throws at you and then sort of react to that?
Well, to be honest, we kind of identify the different types of, should we say, UFC calendar weeks. We've got your typical sort of fight night week. You've got the pay-per-view week, and then you've got the post pay-per-view week. And our content kind of structures around that. So, whenever there's a pay-per-view week, that's when we're going to do the breakdown show, as well as, of course, the watch-along. Watch-along's the one that stayed consistent, obviously, every single week. And then post pay-per-view week, it's more or less, an aftermath to that pay-per-view. And then, maybe a fan cam video will come out as well. And then, the typical fight night week, we will then then kind of target that week as like a week where we can go, right, can we get a fighter on board on the channel? Can we do like a Q&A type session? Or can we do like a news type section that week if we've got time in between preparing for the watch along? So that's kind of the way I vision it, really, and the way that I see it. Then, of course, you've got those weeks where there isn't a UFC event, which is quite rare, of course. That's when we just kind of panic and go, right, like, we need to get something out, like, this week. What will it be? So we're doing, like, lately, been doing more sort of game-type videos. We did, like, a game with Modestas Twakauskas, which we put out a few weeks ago. Well, actually,
Yeah,
to
I
be fair,
saw that. That was a good video.
yeah. So we're
I enjoyed
kind of
that.
bringing out slightly different things, during in those weeks.
Yeah, so obviously, starting, where you are now and looking forward, you've come so far already in such a short space of time. And I think that goes for all of us in sort of the MMA creator space. What was that like, to begin with? How did that all come together as a trio, to build this channel as a sort of, you know, marking it as a point to, say, okay, this is something we can actually build upon. Let's give
Yeah,
it a crack. Like, how did that come about?
yeah. Well, it all came about. It's the typical story of like lockdown, right? When all lockdowns happen, that's when
Mm,
everybody's genius business ideas start to come into play. We just kind of like sat there. We would like recording our reactions bit by bit each fight, and then Ash goes to us one day and says, well, we were doing like live streaming on Call of Duty for quite some time, and he was like, oh, let's just sort of go live with just us watching the event, and we were like, yeah, all right, let's give that a go. And then we just sort of like settle into it. Obviously, no one's like watching us or anything, but we're just sort of like settling into what that could be like. And then the light bulb moments just kind of start to hit. Really, I admire the football fan channels over here in the UK, and that's when I was sort of
yeah,
like, oh,
it's a good comparison.
let's do that, but for UFC based content. Obviously, it'd be good to do the rest of MMA and the other organizations, but good luck doing 2 watch-alongs for 2 organizations in a week, or potentially 3. So that's when we decided to just stick it with the UFC type stuff. And yes, I mean the rest is history. Really, keeps on plodding on.
With the
Yeah.
actual,
So, sorry, go Will. Yeah.
with the actual content itself, you mentioned there different things that you do and different sort of projects that you do on a consistent basis. So you have the watch alongs, you have the reactions, and different things like that. Are you brainstorming ideas as a team as just things that you would possibly like to see? Or are you researching, seeing what people are doing, taking bits you like? What's your sort of process for generating your ideas?
Yeah, I mean, we're definitely keeping tabs on sort of what's going out in the space, the MMA space, especially with video platforms. A lot of it is predominantly run by fighters or former fighters themselves. We also identify those kind of gaps as well,
Mm.
things that people aren't necessarily used to seeing. But no, that's an interesting question, to be honest. Yeah, I don't know. We just kind of like every Monday
I mean,
we come in with our Monday meeting. Like we just have a meeting every single
Mm.
Monday, and every Monday it's that kind of like Mr. Beast type attitude of like, right, how can we get better every
Yeah.
single time? What went wrong this past week? Can we fix it? That sort of thing, really. And then what things can we look ahead at? Like, the next UFC London, for example. How can we target that and make that better next time, and sort of then try and build up a bit of a forward plan, really.
No,
Leo,
I
so
don't know if you
go,
remember.
go on.
Yeah. When I first spoke to you guys, I said you guys were doing it. I admired what you were doing because you were doing it the hard way. Because as you said, a lot of channels nowadays, they're fighters and former fighters, and they have that recognizable personality. And obviously, a lot of us in this creator space, we don't have that luxury. And you guys are taking that style of content and just delving headfirst as a trio, to cultivate a community, which is such a difficult thing to do. But because your output is so crazy, and I think it's only the only way is up. That's the way I see it for you guys. Without being too soppy and whatnot. It's a difficult challenge, and I think there's unique obstacles for all of us in this space. But I like what you
Oh,
guys are doing. But I was going to
we
ask:
lost
is there?
Leo for a sec.
Oh, you good? No, I mean, is there any
Oh.
is there any aspirations and goals you've got for like the next year? I mean, I'm not one for goals personally, but like in terms of specific numbers. But if there's is that anything you want to achieve in by the end of 2024?
Sorry, Leo, you froze for a sec there for me. Can you
Oh,
repeat that?
you all right?
Yeah,
Well,
yeah,
am
yeah,
I
you're
good on
fine.
your end? Yeah.
I can hear you fine, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So did you hear? So I was just wondering if you had any goals for the end of 2024 at all for the channel as a three.
Oof. Do you know what? They were written down so long ago, back in January now. We kind of have an end
I like
year
that.
review, and looking back, I think the goal was in January to hit that monetization area. We've kind of done all that now. So now it's just pretty much just trying to get more live viewers as much as possible, people watching us during the watch-alongs. That's probably the sort of target at the moment. But yeah, like you said, it is a competitive space, and what we like to do is just try and cover all areas as possible. And for us, it's if fans can see other fans bring in that kind of knowledge on the sport that perhaps the former fighters are bringing, then it's kind of like a bit shocking in a way. It's like, oh, what is this? And what we want to do is just kind of like elevate fight fans. Really, we want to increase their passions for the sport. The word casual gets thrown around a bit too much, and of course, there's no harm in being a casual.
Not enough in my liking.
There's no harm in having your favorites and only tuning in for those favorites. But I think, especially over here in the UK, we need more of those people who are just obsessed, and will watch week in, week out.
Yeah, I completely agree.
A bit like a football game, for example. If you watch your team every single week, you're willing to watch them win or lose. For that, it's like we want fans to be watching the UFC week in, week out, whether it be a bad pay-per-view or a bad fight night card, and just still enjoy it. I mean, it's a little bit of a struggle over here in the UK, and that's the reason why we kind of set the channel up and set a community up so that people aren't alone whilst they're watching it at stupid o'clock in the morning.
Yeah, I mean, there's a point to be made there, because we talk about that quite a lot in terms of, the UK media not maybe giving MMA and the UFC as much of a sort of representation as it deserves, and I think that's only proven. I don't know if you saw just on the BBC Sport today. For anyone who's not in the UK listening, it's the equivalent of ESPN. Here. And Tom Aspinall winning the belt wasn't even on the front page. It was below like women's tennis, which, no disrespect to women's tennis, but in terms of the different level of the sport
to women's tennis.
It's not even close. You know what
Let me go
saying?
on record to say that I have been to Wimbledon. I enjoy tennis, but disrespect to women's tennis. That needs to be said foremost. Let me just make that clear.
You understand my point. The comparisons, it's not even close. But our country doesn't really give it the representation it deserves, which is a shame. So I think channels, our three channels and our platforms, we have a responsibility over the next few years to really help build that. I think YouTube is probably the best avenue to do so, for sure.
Yeah, damn right. And I
just
think
coming
also...
back to what you said.
Sorry,
go on.
I was going to say, and also I think it's also down to fighters' managers as well. As soon as like Leon won the belt, I was like, get that man on like BBC News. Like, I want to see him on BBC News. I want to see him in the front lines where all the rest of the other celebrities are. They're like, for instance, I was fortunate enough to be on the back of the TV the other week at Stand Up to Cancer. Like, why is he? Get him involved on those things as well. Like, do you know what I mean? I just think there needs to be like more of that.
It's like an open goal, isn't it? They're just not taking advantage.
Yeah, for sure.
Just coming back to what you said earlier, JK, about goals that you had and about how you have meetings to make improvements. For anyone that's maybe, this isn't to quiz you, by the way, just for anyone that may be listening that is wanting to do something like this, is wanting to create pages, wanting to create content, from more of an operational side, what does that look like? You said that you want to get more people engaged, grow the community, grow the lives, then you look to improve the content. Is there anything that at the moment or maybe in the future you're looking to improve or you're looking to do to sort of hit those targets?
Yeah, I think again it's almost the same in terms of like when you talk about structure and things like that. I mean, there can be areas that might lack consistency within the whole operation, and that might not necessarily be a bad thing. I think the way I see it is we kind of want to grow the team as well, because there is so much that we are currently covering. We should be I feel we should be engaging with people a lot more than we currently do. And when a bright idea happens, for instance, it's like, oh, okay, let's start putting this out on a consistent basis as well. And it's like, oh, okay, cool. Well, that idea involves time, and you have to invest time into that idea. And if you're going to do that, then something else is going to slip. You know what I mean? So for the three of us,
Yeah.
it's difficult to juggle. And, so if you want to get involved on a UFC fan channel and you've got the creative capabilities of whether it be Photoshop or a video editing or website development, anything like that, do get in touch at fightnight.atf@gmail.com. I think.
There it
Or
is.
reach us out on Twitter. But
No,
yeah,
I mean that's definitely the place
basically
to
it.
plug it. I mean, yeah.
You
I
know?
mean, I understand that because I mean, in terms of when you add more people to a team, what's the saying about too many cooks or something? I don't know the
Spoil the
exact thing, but
broth.
that's the
Spoiled
one.
broth. That is
Yeah, and
true in some areas.
it's a difficult balance to find. But I mean, as a team, with me and Will on the podcast, we have our own independent platforms, of course, on YouTube and Instagram, etc. But you know, building the podcast in terms of collaboratively, that's a learning experience for us as well. Because I think we can both admit that we probably aren't up to par in terms of maybe not in terms of communication, but in terms of planning and structure, we're just not very good at that, and that's something we can
Guilty.
work to improve on, and something you guys have the have clearly had the experience doing. So I think that's why it's why we do this podcast. Actually, in a lot of ways, we really shifted towards different creative perspectives. We want to understand and hear what you guys have to say because it's everyone's experience is going to be different, and we're all just trying to build something. We're trying to
Yeah.
build something on this platform, and it's such an exciting space to be a part of.
Yeah, that's true.
But I
And
wanted
you're
to
always learning as well,
just sorry, go.
Sorry, yeah, I was just saying, yeah,
Yeah,
you're
yeah,
always
of
going to
course,
learn. So.
exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I just shifting away from that, I think we could just delve into the fights from last night because we are an MMA podcast as much as we are a creator one as well. So just give us your thoughts on last night's card because to me that's fight of the year contention. Fight of the year, sorry, card of the year contention along with 290. But
Wow.
what are your thoughts on that?
Man, yeah, it was a bit of a roller coaster to be honest. Well, where do I start? To be honest, I was a little bit gutted for Matt Frivola. Obviously, he's been on our channel before. We've spoken to him a few times, but I knew that fight was going to be an absolute dog fight for him, and he's clear toughest test to date. That head kick I kind of saw coming from a mile off. Like it was almost like that slow motion kind of moment, really, from like the Matrix or something with that head kick. But hopefully he'll be back and better than ever. As for Tom Aspinall, it was the knockout surprised me. I think a lot of people were, including myself, were expecting him to perhaps take Pavlovich down in the second round and get the submission because that's what we're known to seeing him do. The fact that it came out post-fight that he'd injured his back in the second week and barely trained
crazy.
is phenomenal. To go out and did what he just did.
I think the fact that it's heavyweight, you can kind of rely on just sheer ability and power, and Aspinall is the perfect combination of that. So you don't need a full camp when you're someone like him because the golfing ability, I think it was clear. If you go watch the tape of Pavlovich's fights, he hits hard, but technique-wise, it's not even a close contest. So I wasn't surprised. I was nervous, but I wasn't surprised by the result. And of course, I'm sure all three of us were just over the moon because it's another British champion in the books. I mean, you can't be mad about it.
I think even just for the way there were so many emotions with that win, just for me personally, because I know you said earlier as well, JK, you came into the sport around lockdown, and it was the same for me. So obviously, I'm and we are getting into the sport, not how we traditionally got into sports, such as football and whatever else, when we were probably a lot younger. So we grew up with it in our childhood. There's a little bit of a sort of different dynamic now that we're obviously adults and we're sort of discovering things. So also for me as well, it always rung true that I'd never actually seen the journey start to finish necessarily of a great, if you'd like. You look at John Jones and GSPs and Anderson Silvers and anyone that you can name. Maybe I saw some fights, I saw the back end of their career, I've watched recaps and documentaries and all of that, but I've never had the physical emotion of watching a rise. But with Tom Aspinall, I very much have, because that's exactly when he came into the UFC. I was watching his journey and things like that. So I think with all those emotions, but then all of those passed, I then thought, just selfishly or collectively for us as well, this is major news for what we do as a job, what we do going forward, what we do in regards to our industry, and just the scope and the reach that this now gives us and opens up in the UK. I think even just for us is is super exciting. What do you think
Yeah,
about that?
no, spot on. You know, I think you're damn right in that. You know, it's exciting times for us. But personally, I think we've got to thank Michael Bisping in a lot of ways for actually paving that way for UK MMA. Because,
Of course,
you know,
yeah.
I remember back in the day when I first got into the sport, which is like 2010, I want to say, and the level of competition where the US and Brazil were compared to us UK guys was like massive. And as the sport's gotten along, you find less specialists, more sort of well-round competitors. Yeah, Bisping winning
Mm.
the middleweight belt, the way he did, is really kind of inspired and propelled the UK fighters, and you've seen that with Leon Edwards, and you've seen that with now Tom Aspinall. So it's exciting to see what else could come in the near future, really, especially from maybe hopefully we got to get a Scottish champion one day as well. Who knows? So
I
yeah,
don't know.
the
I
future's
don't know.
bright.
I don't know if Paul Craig's got the chin for it. Hopefully, though, you never know, man. I love Paul, but it's a tough one. I mean, that's a tough ask, man. At middleweight, we'll see.
Yeah,
Um,
he's
but
capable of
was he at
doing it
light
though.
heavyweight now? Which one did he move up or down?
No, he
He
moved
went down to
down.
middleweight.
He went
He's
down,
fighting
didn't he?
Brendan
Yeah,
Allen next week.
Yeah,
good
it's a
fight.
tough fight.
I think
It's
he
a tough
wins
fight.
that. Yeah.
Hmm.
I mean, there's plenty of so much talent coming out of the UK now. Even on the amateur circuits. Obviously, Will was doing running for Cage Warriors yesterday, and obviously you can speak to the experience of seeing the sort of smaller regional promotions, and going even further down than that. Watching these amateur and pro debuts, and you see, this is the beginning of something new. Fighters who maybe you don't know the names of now, but you can tell they're going to be a big thing, and it's just there's such an evolution in the game, as you said, since you started watching from 2010. You look back to then versus now, not just in the UFC, but across the whole sport in the country. It's just night and day. And it's such an exciting thing to be a part of, maybe not as a fighter, but as, hopefully making this something as a career for all of us, So it's
I think,
it's exciting to sort of be along for the ride.
I think even just
Spot
for last one I'm saying it, even just for UK MMA, you have a look at obviously the talent that we're producing and the amount of guys that we've got on the roster now. But if you look at the very tip of the iceberg in Leon Edwards and Tom Aspinall, not only are they champions, not only are they top of their respective weight divisions, but they're also pound for pound some of the best fighters in the world at the moment. And there's not anyone that's going to disagree with that. There just isn't. So when we have a look at the UK now, the narrative for a very long time is they can't grapple, they can't wrestle, they can't do this, they don't win a lot of championships. And now we have a look at the talent, and now we have a look at the champions. It's very clear that we're producing some of the best mixed martial artists, not wrestlers, not strikers, mixed martial artists. You look at Leon, he's taking down Kamaru Usman. You look at Tom Aspinall, he's a jiu-jitsu wrestling whiz with amazing striking that he done with Tyson Fury, and Rico, the kickboxer from Netherlands, the famous kickboxer. So
yeah,
what's his second name? Rico van Hooven.
I don't know. I think that's it. Yeah.
Yeah, superstar. But my point is, it's like you look at the talent we have now. It's not just guys are winning. We have legitimately pound for pound, skill wise, just some of the best. But JK, what did you think about the co-main? Because that was a highly anticipated fight. What did you think about that one?
Do you mean the main or the co-main?
The main, sorry, the main.
Yeah.
It was the co-main in my mind. That's why.
Yeah. No, I think I felt that Pereira was going to win anyhow. I felt that he needed to come in there with a kick heavy approach, just like we kind of saw in that opening round. In fact, we even saw Glover come out with a kick heavy approach against Yuri, and he's not really known for his kicks, but that's just purely because Yuri likes to kind of bait his head forward. He does bring his hands quite low, and he's quite unpredictable a lot of times. And the low kicks kind of were mounting up and causing Yuri some bother there. Yuri did get that takedown in the second round, and then it was kind of like, oh, is this going to be? Can he grind Pereira out for 5 rounds, perhaps? But I think Pereira's sort of defensive grappling, I think, is one to give credit to be honest.
Yeah,
and we saw that against Jan
well.
Blachowicz. For me, I'm not. Whether or not it was an early stoppage with the elbows or not, I'm undecided, to be honest.
I don't think so.
You don't think so? Yeah. because I was
No,
looking at
after
different
that post-fight
angles.
interview, that was what sold
Oh
it for me.
yeah, because he was honest, and it was good.
Yeah.
Props to him for being honest. But I was looking at the hand grips behind Pereira's legs and the way he just kind of like let go of that, and that was a slight sign that maybe perhaps he did go out for a split second. Then
100%.
when the two of them went down, and they went down, but I think Yuri's head was kind of like tucked, so that was probably like the moment where he kind of came back around, and then you could kind of see the fight continuing from there. But I think Pereira was going to finish it anyway, even if it was to go on a
I
little bit
think so.
longer.
I mean, he was landing into mount. There wasn't much
Yeah,
much space for him to go there.
no, for
Yeah.
Yeah,
sure.
when I watched
I mean,
that
what do you do
live,
from there?
when I watched that live, I thought instantly, oh, this is a little bit early. And then I watched the interview after where he admitted it, which of course, but then you watch it back and then you realize those two short shots, I'm pretty sure he gets knocked out with one of those. And we've
Those
seen
elbows.
him, we've seen him as well against, don't forget, against Dominic Reyes. He got knocked out with the up kick, which he admitted to as well. So we have seen him do that sort of thing before. I think he actually may have got knocked out a couple of times in that sequence, just little flashes. And you can sort of see him go limp a little bit. And I think just on Mark Goddard's side, the stakes are as high as they possibly can be. The people in there have threat level as high as they possibly can be. And making that decision in that split second is so difficult, and it takes so much experience to make the right one. And I think he nailed it, and I think it was a super impressive decision, to be perfectly honest.
Yeah, and the more we look at it, it's going to age pretty well. Just jumping back before we round off, because obviously I know you're short for time. Just going back to the channel, just as looking at your sort of journey as a three, sort of retrospectively so far, what's like been your best experience? Because it's such a wild ride being a content creator. So what's that been like for you? What's your
It is, because
all-time moment
it
that
is
sticks out?
hectic every single week, near enough. For an all-time high for me, I think it's probably two moments. It might be when Leon knocked out Kamaru Usman. That reaction was insane. But then
We
not
say
only
the
that,
same.
I think maybe having Frankie Edgar on the channel was pretty special, because not only that,
Yeah,
Ash
that's
was a
awesome.
massive fan of Frankie Edgar, and he's like his absolute idol. And having watched the fights with him, grow up watching the UFC with him, and go around to his house at super o'clock in the morning to watch Frankie fight X amount of times, and then to sort of land onto that moment, it was like surreal. Like the way he popped up on screen as well, and it's like, oh my god, we're talking to Frankie Edgar. Like, do you know what I mean? And he's such a
How
sound
did that
guy
come
as well.
about?
To be honest, well, Ash does the rounds in terms of messaging fighters and that, and
Yeah.
Frankie just happened to reply. It is a bit of a funny story, to be honest, because originally he agreed to a date and time. Ash came over all nervous to our place to go live with it, and we didn't hear from Frankie for like maybe a good hour beforehand, and like we're just like sitting around, no sign of him.
Yeah,
And
you're
we're
just
like,
waiting.
oh fuck. And we're literally like, I was like trying to message like Mark Henry on Twitter, and just hoping that he sees it and hope that he can find out what's happening to Frankie. But luckily, and it was sort of like that moment where it's like never meet your heroes, and you start having like those doubts in your mind. You're like, oh no. But luckily he got back to us, and he said like, I'm ever so sorry, boys. The wife wanted to go away on a camping trip, didn't have any reception. Can we do it tomorrow? So of course Ash came back to ours, all the way, about 40-minute drive back to ours the next day to get set back up again. And Frankie done it from his car, and yeah, it was such a class moment. That's probably one of my favorites.
I mean, yeah, I think people forget that these guys are just human. They're normal people, and if you don't ask, you don't get in this game. And that rang true for us. Obviously, in terms of fighter interviews, we haven't had a huge amount of experience, but we had Jack Shaw on as our first one, and that was just purely because I reached out via email, and then within about 3 hours, we had the date all penned in. So it's like, these guys are normal people. Most of them are not that hard to get hold of. Obviously, when the further up the ladder you go, fame tends to be a bit of a sort of barrier. But
Yeah.
I think there's plenty of these as I said, they're just humans, and I keep repeating myself, but they're normal people. So, and that's something people forget when we watch these guys step into the octagon for entertainment and a bloodbath. And we mention this all the time. You don't see everything behind the scenes and all the work and build up that goes into it on the physical and mental side of things. So I think that's something for anyone listening is to really keep mind of. Looking at the card last night, these guys put their lives on the line. So just appreciate that. That's
I
probably what I'll
think
round off with.
just last one on that, because if anyone's listening, and because a lot of people, I'm sure you've all had the question at some point. I know I have. I'm sure you both have. Of how did you get input XYZ opportunity? Whether it's an interview, whether it's an event, whatever it may be. People always ask, how did you do that? A lot of the time, the answer is you don't ask, you don't get.
Yeah.
And it's exactly what you said, Leo. I think the slight nuance to that is you have to be understanding that, of course, it's paramount. You're polite. You're reaching out with value. You're not trying to take up too much of their time, but also you're a little bit aware of, are they in camp? Have they got anything going on? Are they on holiday? Having a little bit of sort of guile around that as well.
Yeah.
But Leo, as you were, mate.
Yeah, I mean that's a good place to round off. JK, if you wanna plug anything, I know you plugged a job offering, but if you
Swiftly.
wanna plug the channel,
It was like
it was
Indeed.
very
It was
clean.
like Indeed.com just out of nowhere. He had that in the subconscious just drawn up.
But yeah, if you do want to plug anything, channel, anything you're working on, go for it, mate. Now's your chance.
Of course, well, subscribe to Against the Fence on YouTube and hit the notifications bell. Keep up to date with all the content that's coming your way. Definitely should check out the video that we released earlier on in the week, asking the question of can Tom Aspinall dethrone John Jones. So, check that video out.
You absolutely can.
Recorded during UFC London time in July. We just went around asking as many people as possible that question. So, see what the people are saying.
Lovely, mate. Appreciate that. So that was JK from Against the Fence. It's a shame there wasn't all three of them, but it would have been a formatting nightmare. So now we're just going to catch up. It's going to be a pretty chill chat for the rest of the episode. How was Cage Warriors, mate? That's what I want to know.
I don't know why. I actually have no idea why. It was packed. It was the most packed I've ever seen the Indigo O2. There was not a spare seat. There was not a spare square to stand. And with no disrespect to the people fighting, because there were a lot of good fights on there, there weren't many big marquee names. And there was actually a couple of dropout fights as well. There's a couple of fights that got pulled. But it was absolutely rammed. So I don't know what that was all about, but they had the MMA Fighting Academy there. So I don't know if you were too familiar, but basically Cage Warriors ran a competition, or they ran a comp, basically, a camp even, if you like, where they ran trials, and then whoever got through the trials then got put in a house in San Diego, a multi-million-pound mansion. Right, this is insane, by the way. They got put in a multi-million-pound mansion, all the team, all expenses paid for, lifts everywhere, gear, food, training partners, travel, everything taken care of, everything to the highest level. And then at the end of the process, so they film it all as if sort of the Ultimate Fighter style, they film it all, chop it up, and then at the end of the process, what they do is then they give them fights on Cage Warriors. So those guys, there were a lot of guys last night that were fighting from that show, from San Diego, that went out there and trained on the card last night. So it was like an accumulation of their sort of work out there, if that makes sense.
I bet they've got a bit of a bounty on their head a little bit. Do you know what I mean? Because they've got all that treatment and all the trimmings,
You could be right.
Fight camp.
Yeah, you could be right. I don't know if that was the case.
How did it go for him? What was the overall results?
There were a lot of good results. Yeah, there were a lot of good results. I can't remember exactly the numbers because there were quite a few of them. But the first boy of the night, Adam Darby, really tall, interesting fighter, got a standing guillotine, choked him out unconscious. The body just crumpled to the floor, very reminiscent of John Jones. Yeah, and in my opinion, after a beautiful knockout, that's the best way to finish a fight, in my opinion. I don't actually think there's a better way to finish a fight than that John Jones standing guillotine.
Something like it.
I think it's super impressive. But I managed to speak to, I'm not sure if you're familiar with Teddy Stringer. I know that you saw the reel that I put up.
Yeah. It sounds familiar.
So he's someone that is playing the game exactly how you should be playing the game on all fronts.
As a fighter, that is.
As a fighter, he had 23 amateur bouts.
That is pretty. That's a lot.
23. So yesterday it was his second professional fight, but obviously he's so experienced. So not only just from a skill perspective, he's very talented, very well rounded, very exciting to see what he does. All of that stuff, which is very important. But the second side to it is his social media and his branding and his online presence is so good. And that's actually how I know him because of that. And that's how we sort of knew of each other. So I managed to speak to him yesterday and sort of ask him how important that was, what it was like working with the Hardwick brothers as well, and things like that. So that was pretty good. Other than that,
they came up through Cage Warriors as well. So
yeah, exactly. And they went out there to the I didn't even mention that. They went out to, well, I didn't mention that just then. They went out to San Diego to go and train with a few of the boys as well, because one of their training partners was out there. So they were out there and they got a bit of work in. And then, yeah, I had a couple of interesting conversations. The man who was the producer for it, who just recently got assigned the role, I said to him, "Oh, do you do much of this?" I was having a conversation for 10 minutes. And he said, "No, just got put on this a couple of days ago." I said, "Do you do combat sports?" He said, "No, I'm just the producer for Kevin Hart." And I said, "Oh, it's a bit of a slight switch up."
What the fuck?
A bit of a slight switch up. I said, "When's the last time you done MMA?" And he went, back in the I think it was a tap out event." And I said, "Oh, that's
Oh my, yeah.
old." I was like, "That's old.
Oh,
That's not even just old."
yeah.
But it was a really good event, packed house, ton of talent. And I always
Love
say, and I always mean it, if you're local to Cage Warriors, whether that's the ones that they do in Manchester, San Diego, Dublin, wherever it is, London, definitely try and get a ticket. £30, full
Especially the Indigo
card.
as well.
Yeah, if you
How
can get to
intimate it is,
London, I love that one. I really do. You can go
It's cool,
upstairs
innit?
and people are clapping guard passes, and you go downstairs and people are having an absolute riot. So yeah, that was really good. Yeah, thank you to recap that one.
Yeah, I mean, is any good networking connections built there at all? Any new
I did meet
partnerships established, if
I
you
did
will?
meet a boy called Will that lived a mile away from me, that runs an account called Just Casuals. So
Small
weird.
world, mate.
So a
There you
very
go.
weird lineage there, but there wasn't a ton of media there, to be perfectly honest. And everyone there that was working, I'd met before, which is kind of, I mentioned before, it's kind of nice now, because when I go to these
Small
events,
circle.
it's a lot more comfortable for me personally. Obviously, there's a lot of coaches there and whatnot that are cornering fighters that obviously I now know and have met, and a lot more of the roster, and then obviously the background staff and whatnot as well. So I think even just turning up and getting some reps in, putting a face to a name more consistently, and just, I think there's a lot to be
That's
said
it,
for
man.
that. Yeah, I really do think there's a lot to be said for that. I think sometimes it's easy for people to worry about things, get anxious about things, overcomplicate things, of when it comes down to maybe working an event or interviews or anything like that. I think sometimes it's as important just to be there and for people to see your face in that setting multiple times, because then they start making the association of, okay, he does this and he's at this type of place and I see him
Yeah,
here. And it does add up and it does compound, and it's only small and you can't really see the effects firsthand. But I definitely think there's a lot to be said for just showing up, getting your face in the door, and sort
I
of
agree.
yeah, just being present. But yeah, it
I
was
think
very
you're
good.
right there as well, because you say putting a face to the name. Like, that's something I've been, no, name to a face. That's something, or the other way around. It doesn't really
Yeah,
matter. It's
I
something
think
I've been
I
trying
got
to
it
do.
wrong.
Yeah. I mean, that's something I've been trying to do, obviously, with the live streaming as well. And I did my first watch along
True.
yesterday, which I hadn't done for Pac-Man yet. And it was an interesting experience. It was quite a weird one, because it was almost like any time the fight would start, the chat would just die, basically, because no one was chatting. Everyone was so obsessed with the fight. So it was quite a weird thing to witness. Every time in between fights, the whole chat would come back and start chatting. And it was fun. It wasn't maybe didn't have as much people in it as I liked, but that's the you're gonna get this because there's other watch alongs, there's loads of other channels doing the same thing. So you gotta, I think
For
JK
sure.
said it best earlier, it's a competitive space. You gotta fight for your spot, and carve out your corner. So I think that's something to do, and you just gotta put the reps in, as you said, because I think for this channel my size, I don't get the amount of viewers as I probably should. But that makes sense, because I don't represent myself with a face with my videos. So really, the live streaming
True.
thing is kind
That's
of like
true.
starting from zero. So
Can think of it like that because it's actually
it's
sort
a
of
difficult thing. Yeah,
very contradicting content, I guess, isn't it, with what you do?
yeah, it is. And maybe that's a disadvantage, and maybe I'm doing it wrong. But at the same time, my videos don't serve. My face doesn't serve the videos. They don't
Mm.
need. It doesn't need my face in them. So I don't know. I don't know where I should really take that.
I think that's up to you whether I look at someone immediately. What came into my head was the fighting business, just because I know that he doesn't have a face to
Yeah,
his channel and has a voiceover, and then he has a secondary channel where
which I
he
don't think he
does
uses anymore.
TFB
I hadn't.
talks. He does. He posted the
No,
other
I
day
know.
on it.
Oh, did he? Is he back on it now? Because he
Yeah,
hadn't uploaded on it in a while.
quite
Because I
possibly.
was having a look at
Yeah,
it.
quite possibly. I saw him
Let's have a look.
post the other day, but that was the first thing
Oh,
that
he is. Yeah, he did.
came to mind. In truth, I don't know the answer to that. I don't know whether that's. I don't think it's hindering you. I don't think it's hindering you to do live streams off that account because people don't
No,
necessarily see a
I don't think it
face.
is. It's a net positive. There's no negative to doing it.
No,
There's no
oh,
downside
100% not.
besides the
But I
time, of
think you're
course.
right. Yeah.
That's. But
Apart from the what, sorry?
the time, it's the time. JK said it as well. It's a time consumption thing. You put effort into one thing, it means the amount of effort you put into something else is going to falter a little bit, and you've got to find that balance with the amount of hours you have. So
On
it's
that
a
as
logistical
well.
challenge for sure.
On that as well, you're 100% right. I think the important thing that we're always trying to do, whether we notice it or not, is always trying to optimize how we use that time, right? And I know for me, I'm always looking within the platforms of what content can I make to optimize the platform, right? Or what's sort of more contextual, what sort of mediums are more contextual. And one that I've discussed before, and it's become more apparent to me than ever this week. And I know I've said it before and I haven't really fully committed to it, but I've made the necessary commitments now, is live streaming is so important and is so
It's just integral,
ubiquitous
isn't it?
now that you sort of have no choice. You have no choice but to build a community through your live stream. So many people enjoy that type of content now. And I think it goes back to where we discussed authenticity before, sorry. There's no rawer form of content than a live stream because it's candid, you're reacting to the moment, you're speaking completely off the cuff. And people like to go in and have a conversation. People like to go in and sort of have someone to watch,
Yeah,
catch up with, or whatever it
for
may
sure.
be, even though that feels weird to us. So this is a small side tangent, but I think for anyone listening, I don't know if you're like this, Leo, but I know for me, I'm like this. If you want to start integrating a habit, so for me, I want to start integrating consistent live streaming. I want to do that. That's my goal. So in an ideal world, dream of dream, I do that 4 times a week, right? Dream of dream, I do that 4 times a week. So instead of setting myself a goal that potentially I'm going to fail in the short term, I'm going to strip that back completely. I'm going to say, right, for the first, to start off, I'm going to do 1 a week. I'm going to do 1 a week. I'm going to do 1 live stream a week and I can commit to that. Okay. How can I then reduce friction to make that process easier?
And then
Well,
build up to more. Yeah.
exactly, right? So for me, what that looks like is I need to, I know it sounds stupid, but I need to get rid of some furniture out of my shed so that I can set up my stands, cameras, and
Yeah.
laptop perfectly so I can just go
Another
in,
pain.
sit down, and click live, because then that's reducing friction and that's going to make that 1 a week easier. So now if I start doing that and I start building those foundations, then I can start building it up to is, right, okay, now it's 2, now it's 3. And I think for anyone that's trying to get in this space, whether it's content creation, whether it's creating on Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, whatever it may be, we always go to the grandest goal. We look at live streamers that are on it every day and got crazy platforms and reach, and we think, okay, we're going to do that. It's very hard to start there. You're trying to look like Arnie on your first day in the
I'm
gym.
kind of. I didn't visualize that, but I did. You were talking about gradually building, which is actually what I did with my content. But it's live streaming, I just jumped straight in there. For 2-3 weeks, I was doing one every day, and I by the end of it, I kind of burnt out and I checked out from it. And that's something I'm learning. Like I don't really have a schedule at all right now, and I keep promising I'm going to stream and then not streaming, and it's a bit all over the place. Because I can't find the consistency because I spent that first 2-3 weeks I just jumped in there and overdid it. I overcooked it. So that's something to learn from. I think you're definitely right in terms of gradually building up. So I need to, I know I've told you before I don't like scheduling, but that might be something I'm gonna have to do in terms of,
But you say that, but
time,
you do
maybe
you
splice
do
it up across the
schedule
week.
because you schedule your YouTube posts every Friday. So it
Yeah, for
wouldn't sound
YouTube, yeah, but
crazy
I think
to
that's
schedule a
easier.
live stream every Wednesday at 6 p.m.
Oh no, but I could do more than that. Like I want to stream. I think I'll be happy maybe streaming 3 times a week. Maybe I think that's probably a fair amount.
I think
Three or
definitely.
4 times a week.
I
That's
think
probably what I'm the sweet spot for me.
I think definitely. The only reason again, it's obviously always different for different people, but the only reason I said that is because when I liken it to the gym is always such an easy example. But it's almost like when people start getting into the gym, right? The first thing they say to themselves is, right, okay, from Monday, I'm going to start going to the gym 4 times a week, 4 times a week. And I'll say to the person, say to my client, when's the last time you went to the gym? Like genuinely, not in a muggy way. It's like, 4 months ago, 5 months ago. It's like, right, okay. So you've been to the gym twice in the last 4 years, and now you are expecting to go 4 times in a week. You're setting yourself. It's not an impossible goal at all. Anyone could probably do that if
No,
they
I get what you're
pushed
saying.
to
Yeah,
it.
you're
But
biting
my
off more than you
point
can chew.
is, it's like I think subconsciously and mentally, you want to receive small wins, small wins, small wins, small wins. So I think if you set for 4 and say you don't hit on the first week or the second week or the third week, you're instantly then met with failure. And you're then subconsciously like, right, okay, I've missed my date, right, I'm out a bit of slack a little bit, right, I can't really bother. You start getting into a lull. It starts going like that. Whereas if you just go,
Yeah,
right,
and then you spiral.
one a week, that's it, that's all I'm doing, commit to it. Guess what happens? You do that one, you do it on time, you do it scheduled, and then guess what happens? You likely do the second one. You likely do the second one, and you just slowly
Yeah.
build. But that's just that's my rant, just because I know how I personally get. That's just me personally, and I think for
No,
a lot
no,
of
no, no.
people,
I mean, it's
sometimes
a
they
learning
bite off more than
experience for sure.
they
That's
chew. But
you're right. I definitely did that. So I'm trying to strip that back now. Like I don't want to do too little at the same time because I feel like it's a missed opportunity. So I
100%.
started hitting that. It's about hitting that sweet spot. So and it has been successful. Like I mean, I average around 10. On YouTube. Obviously, I know on TikTok you tend to get more, but on YouTube I'm averaging around 10, 11 people. Concurrently, which
That's
isn't
good.
crazy, but
I think that's good.
it's on YouTube. It's pretty good.
I think
So
I think the thing for you as well is they're all chatting.
yeah, 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 yeah.
So
It's always a fun time.
I've had a lot of people in a live stream before where maybe it's not been that as active, and I'm honestly just talking to myself. I don't even care. I'm just talking to myself. Just about my week. I'm just speaking out loud. I'm looking crazy.
When it gets to those trenches, yeah, when no one's giving you nothing,
I
you're
don't
like, well,
care though.
I'm just gonna, yeah, yeah.
I used to think, oh my god, this is so embarrassing. I'm on a live stream because this is a thing that no one talks about as well. Is when you start these things, it's okay. Even you talk about 10 people. That's a lot of people. You see hundreds and you
Yeah.
see thousands and all these different things, but no one talks about when you go on a live stream and you tell people you're going to live stream, or maybe you haven't, or you just go on there and no one's in there. No one's in there and no one's talking. And if people are in there, they're not talking. And then it gets push comes to shove. And then after a few
Yeah.
of those, I started realizing I'm just going to talk to myself. I don't care anymore. I don't care if I look a bit crazy or nuts, or if someone comes in
Because
and
they
then
don't
it
care
first
either
person.
when you think about
No,
it. That's
mate,
what I'm saying. Yeah,
you're a
exactly.
drop in the ocean at this point. It really
Exactly. Yeah.
doesn't matter. And I think for you, because people are engaging, because people are chatting on the back end, then you can even use that as shorts. I don't think there's any reason that you can't use that for a shorts, or if you have a shorts channel, I can't remember or whatnot, or even putting it on
No, but
the podcast shorts if it was something relevant or whatever you wanted.
yeah.
But definitely, yeah, there's a ton of value there. What's the week been like for you, just in regards to creating?
Yeah, not too bad. I got the video over the line. It did okay. It just kind of the problem with the YouTube algorithm is you never know what it's going to throw at you because I did my Ian Gary video, which I was pretty proud of, and I knew it was a bit of a gamble because I did a video on Ian Gary before, and it's literally my lowest
Remember
performing
you
video
saying,
on the channel. Yeah, and I was like, this is a gamble, but I think if I package it right and the video is better, and I will concede my content creation in terms of my video quality itself is leveled up in terms of narration,
yeah,
editing, and everything. It's not nothing huge, but the difference is there. And I was like, the video is going to be more engaging. It's going to be longer. People are going to be tuning in for longer. The thumbnail will be better. The title will be better. I'm going to do it better this time. And that was my mindset going into it because I knew there was going to be a risk. And for the first 6-7 hours or so, it was one of my like a 9 out of 10 on YouTube. For those who don't know, they do a 1 out of 10. They do a rating out of 10 system. they compare your video in that same time frame to your previous 9 other videos. So 1 being the best, 10 being the worst. And after about 8 hours, it's sitting about a 9 out of 10, which is not good. And I was a bit pissed off, but I was like, okay, let's just let it sit because I know what the algorithm's like. And then it picked up. And it peaked at about 600 views in an hour. I was like, oh shit, here we go. We're finally getting somewhere. And then it died again, like the next day. And I was like, you don't. It's such a strange thing. I don't know what causes it. I don't think anyone really knows. They just pretend like they do. But it's sitting about 4.3K in a day and a half, which isn't too bad. I'm not too mad about it.
So with that,
again, it's baby steps.
With that, you said, okay, it done well, then it died down, and like you said, sometimes it really can just be to freak accident, but it also can be a million other things. Your process there, do you then go into, when there's a little bit more data collected, do you then go into the back end and go, right, okay, I'm going to have a look at the retention curve, and I'm going to have a look at...
I do.
Okay, take us through that process.
Nothing crazy, though. Yeah, so the weird thing is I always look at my retention rate and my click-through rate. So I'm like, okay, my retention rate, I'm quite proud because I'm pretty consistent at getting a good retention rate. Even after I've upped my video time. So I've gone from 8-minute videos to, 12 minutes. I mean, this one was only 10, but usually they're 12 minutes plus, and my retention is still the same, if not a bit better. I tend to hover around 55 to 60% retention, which is it's sometimes to 65, which is very good. So I'm more than I'm getting to 70% is very, very, very difficult, and most people can't do it. So, getting the numbers I'm seeing now, that's good, and that should, obviously, it's not, retention isn't the be all and end all of how well a video performs in terms of views, but it is clearly a factor. And the more interesting I was intrigued about is my click through rate was very good. I'm still hovering about an 8.8% click-through rate. It's with 4,000 views.
So for people that don't know, what does that mean? What do these things mean? What does retention graph mean? What does click-through rate mean?
Yeah, so click-through rate is the percentage of people who see your thumbnail on their YouTube homepage, subscription page, whatever it may be. They've seen your video thumbnail and title, and they've clicked on it. So it's those percentage of those who've clicked on it compared to those who have just scrolled past and looked away.
So you want a high one.
So obviously you want a high one. And the number tends to dilute the more views you get, obviously. As it's the law of averages, but so I was sitting at about 8.8% yesterday with 4,000 views, which is very good actually. Normally they don't tend to hold that long, and most of them sit around 5 to 6%, which is still very good as well. But that was what surprised me, is I thought with that click-through rate and that retention rate, I was like, okay, this video should be getting pushed more, but it just hit a brick wall on YouTube. It gets a flat line on that graph. And I was like, oh, I couldn't really understand why. And it's something you just have to, I don't know what to do. You just roll with the punches and you go on to the next one. It's such a hard thing to figure out.
I know I was listening to Diary of a CEO the other day, or I was actually listening to Stephen Bartlett talk about the Diary of a CEO. And they were talking about their YouTube strategy and how they would A/B test. So again, for anyone that is listening that maybe doesn't know what A/B testing is, it's super, super simple. It's essentially taking a thumbnail and title combination, and you're going to try that one and see how it performs, and you call that A, for example, and then you're going to have another set, which is a different thumbnail and title, maybe a mixture of the two, maybe completely random, completely new, whatever it is, and you keep testing them and seeing how they perform. The only reason I say that is because I was going to ask you, have you ever, this is just a thought, not necessarily pushing you to do this, just because it came to the top of my head. Have you ever thought about looking into A/B testing multiple thumbnails and titles on videos within those first couple of hours?
Well, they're rolling, you probably know about this, they're rolling out an official A/B testing beta on YouTube. It's only to a very, very select few thousand YouTubers, so obviously it's not available to me just yet. Hopefully that'll be something I'll use in the future. Sure, I tend to change my title a lot. I changed the title within the first couple of hours because it didn't perform. And I didn't get an immediate reaction, but I preferred the new title. I changed it. It was originally The Curious Case of Ian Gary, which I thought was quite a fun title, a bit, engaging, a bit, provocative. But then I changed it. I was like, I'm going to change it to a bit more clickbaity, but a bit more, then sometimes you have to sacrifice morals when it comes to the title of thumbnail. It was How Ian Gary Destroyed His Own Reputation.
So
and the video itself, I think that's a better title, right? But I think so. And obviously, the video itself was unbiased. Obviously, you have to get people to click and draw in. So it's the game, and it clearly did work because there was an uptick later on. So,
and I think for anyone listening that maybe just heard two titles there. The difference between those, just for me listening to that, is so you have option A, The Curious Case of Ian Gary. I like it. Sounds nice.
I like it as well.
It's cool. Is it a great YouTube title? No, not really. Is it a nice title? Yeah, 100%. Because there's ambiguity to it, if that makes sense. There's a little.
That was what I was trying to achieve.
Yeah.
I think it's not a bad YouTube title.
I don't think it's bad. I don't think it's bad, but I just don't think it sets.
I think for the niche, it doesn't work.
Yeah, in
That's
clear terms, I don't think it says with a foghorn, this is what the video says. And I think sometimes YouTube...
That was my biggest thing with it. It wasn't clear enough.
Exactly.
Like, I wanted to be provocative, but still, have a bit of clarity. And it was kind of a bit, it wasn't telling you what the video is really about. And I was like, okay, let's make it clear.
The thing as well is people are way more drawn to negativity than they are curiosity sometimes as well. So if we say, oh, here's this curious story, it's kind of a little bit soft, a little bit cute, a little bit sort of mysterious. But if we say, this is how this was destroyed, we're just completely changing the tonality. And now we're like, oh my God, how did he destroy it? And that's
I'm going to click on this video.
Yeah, that's creating the intrigue. Sometimes when
I knew it worked as well. Because my click-through rate, I watched my click-through rate go up. In fact, which is such a rare thing. Because the general rule of thumb is the more views you get, the click-through rate goes down. That's just how it is.
Yeah.
And I watched it go up with the view count, which is crazy. When it started to spike up, it peaked at obviously it did fall back down afterwards as YouTube started to push it out. But it went up to peaked over 10%. It was about 10.3%, which is, I was very happy with that. That's some of the best I've ever done. And obviously it's a combination of title thing. I think the title really sold that one more than anything. That title change was definitely worth it. But at the same time, I don't know what causes it to flatline that quickly. And you never know. I think it's one of those videos that can definitely just pick up out of nowhere again. But it's just a matter of it's YouTube, man. You really just don't know what's gonna happen. So I don't know. It's such a confusing game. I mean, you know as well as much as I do how much of a struggle it is. So
I think with what we're doing, I think this week I really sort of every now and again I get different waves of realization of ideas and projects and whatnot. And I messaged you this week and I sort of had another wave of realization. It's not necessarily new ideas or a new thought process, more so just a fresh reminder that with what we're doing, I said this to you before and I'll say it to you again, and I like documenting it on the podcast anyway because we're still early doors, so it'll be fun to look back on in episode 500. But I said it previously, we 100% can completely just take over the side of diving into MMA creation, talking to creators, finding the struggles, finding how to
anything, really.
balance it with your job, finding what the operational side looks like, giving you a little bit of advice with title, thumbnails, And whilst that isn't at the moment the most lucrative of industries, what just happened last night?
There you go.
We had a takeover in our country of one of the best sports stars in this country at the moment. And I'm not being funny. Whenever it's heavyweight, it's a million times more. Whether it's boxing, whether it's anything. When it's heavyweight, it's just bigger. Very simply. It just very simply is. So I think I look at what we're doing, and if we're on the right track, because this week obviously we set up the Instagram, and this week we've got a better idea of how to
and the TikTok.
Yeah, and the TikTok. Sorry, and
you just as a question, did you post that test short we did? Did you post that on YouTube as well? Or no?
I post not on YouTube. I've just realised I haven't done that. But I post on TikTok and I post on Instagram. Instagram, we've got a few thousand views. TikTok, between them, they got just over 1,000 views, which is
good.
Good.
Did on TikTok? I didn't see it on TikTok.
Yeah, they got like 600 views each, which is pretty good.
That's a good start.
But this week, how we're going to level it up is obviously we know the process a little bit better between you and me. We won't get into because there's nothing interesting. But also, for me personally, the work begins very rigidly for me now, and you'll probably be the same, on the Sunday, so that I can get those shorts out for this podcast and draft on YouTube, TikTok, and Instagram for all those platforms.
Yeah.
So that there is no work to do throughout the week. It's done tonight. So yes, that's a longer day. Yes, I'm sleep deprived. But I think that they're just
the game we play.
they're the necessary evils to sort of.
Yeah.
You
To
excited?
overcome.
I feel excited. I don't know.
I mean, I'm optimistic. Yeah. I'm not looking forward to getting those shorts chopped up and adding the background in because it's just tedious. But I'm excited for the end product, because we've done the heavy lifting already. The episode's there. And speaking of that, I actually want to get ahead on that now. So I think we should wrap it up there because we can go for another half an hour there just since JK left, which marks us about
Perfect.
the hour mark, which is where we tend to record from. So an outro once more, even though the initial one will probably be edited out, as being the MMA Creators Podcast, episode 24. We'll see you next Sunday.